What's up, guys? It's Eventon here. I know it's been a while since my last video. I try my best to post like 2 or 3 videos a week, but I know it's been a little over a week now and I haven't posted a video yet. So just been dealing with some IRL stuff. Not only that, also my door, like my window, faces like a really main street here in Arizona, and they've been doing really loud construction for the better part of like 3 days. So a lot of the videos I have tried previously just had a ton of background noise, so I'm gonna try and get this knocked out in one shot while they're not set up, and if they do make some noise, I apologize. But regardless, I've also been kind of running into a little bit of writer's block. I don't know, video editing, posting block, whatever you want to call it. And I know whenever I get in that kind of mood, all I need to do is just get the microphone going, just talk about something EVE Online related, and I know you guys are going to rally behind it, or give your opinion, or talk about how weird I sound. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. I just want to get something out there for you guys. So in the meantime, we're actually looking at the Megathron here, and I'm going to be giving away a Scope Syndicate Megathron skin. So this is one of the partner skins. These are very exclusive, only a, I wouldn't say limited time, but there's only a limited amount of them that are going to be given out. So I've applied it to my ship. I actually use this ship all the time to roll wormholes, and I love it, and a lot of the other corp mates love the look of it too as well. So I'm going to be giving away, let's go ahead and give away 2 of these skins for this video. So down in the comments below, I'm going to need your in-game name, as well as what do you guys have learned about PvP? I'm going to be talking about my experiences being a complete and utter PvP noob. And if I bring up some topics or some things you guys didn't know about or that you just want to comment on, I would love to get that down below as well to help you guys get in a giveaway. So sorry if this seems a bit long-winded. I just want to do this all in one shot. So the first thing I've kind of learned about being a complete PvP noob, and I've learned so much like in the last month and a half being in the Dark Venture Corporation, just doing wormhole PvP a lot and just learning concepts, ideas, ships, mechanics. These are all things that were completely new to me until I started playing. All right, and the first one is tackling. Now, I'm gonna try my best to put up some visuals for you guys. To be honest, I had so many like tiny little clips and footages I had over the last like month. I had like over 200 clips, and I did not want to dig through all of them. I just needed the mental clarity, and I just deleted all of them. Like, you know what, I'm gonna start fresh. So I'm gonna put up some footage. It might be other YouTube videos. It might just be pictures off of like EVE Uni, things like that. So just bear with me here, but I just want to talk about some of my experiences in PvP so far. So anyway, back to tackling. This is a really hard thing to do. I've done it a couple times myself, and it's really hard to be able to engage a ship, especially if you are a scout, if you are out hunting, if you're trying to find the right angle. There's a huge difference between a brand new novice person that is running tackle versus someone that's been doing it for a long time. Not just from a skill differential, like time spent in the game and the type of skills they've been skilling into, but mostly just being able to descan the targets correctly, finding your threats. Which one should you target? Which one's a target priority? If you land on grid and there's 6 different ships, which one should you target first? Finding the right trajectory so you don't get immediately one shot off the field once you actually do land. There's so many different things, and it's actually very, very difficult to be done. So if you guys are PvPing a lot and you guys do have those handful of players that do run tackle a lot, give them some appreciation, because it is a very difficult job to do. And some of these tacklers don't even have weapons on there. So a lot of the time they are getting on these kills, but they're not doing any damage. There's kind of a different thrill for them at the end of the day. So there is one type of tackle that I think does reign supreme, that no one's ever going to reject you for running this type of tackle. I'll cover that later in the video. Currently I'm running a Malediction, but I do eventually want to get into a Stiletto, which seems to be those two seem to be arguably the best PvP interceptors that I've been told, and at least I've practiced with so far. All right, and the next thing I'm going to cover is Nano, and this is more of like a fleet identity thing. Ideally, if you're in a PvP fleet, you want everyone doing the same thing, or at least on the same page about what they're going to do. And Nano essentially is just going really fast, being able to determine the distance and the rules of engagement that's happening on field. So I believe it's named after the nanofiber internal structure module that goes down in the low slot that essentially increases your speed and align time, but does harm some of your hull HP. So this whole thing, the whole concept of Nano is just moving really fast, being able to keep things at range, or being able to close the distance on things that are dying and being able to finish it off and things like that. And so I can tell you what, if you are in a slow, bulky ship, or a ship that just does not move very quickly, so occasionally there is nothing more frustrating than encountering a nano fleet that is just always staying out of range, or they're just out of web or scram range, and you try to get close and they're just flying in circles around you and all this kind of stuff. So it can't be really frustrating, and this is typically where you see a lot of the really, really good solo PvPers do. They run some sort of you know, Nano Brutics. They're running Hurricanes and not stilettos, but stabbers, things like that. Like they run a lot of these ships that are very quick, that can move. And sometimes these engagements, you can take, you know, 1v3, 1v5, 1v10. Like you've seen it all the time on Twitch and YouTube. Some of these really, really good solo PvP pilots out in nullsec is they run Nano so they can kind of keep range and dictate the distance. Because if you do this next one, like Brawling, Brawling is essentially you bring, it doesn't have to be necessarily a big heavy ship, but just has really, really close range guns. You're able to lock people down with webs, scrams, whatever it may be. And if you get on top of a ship like a Nano, if you end up somehow catching them, they're pretty much dead to rights. I mean, they're already losing that holy HP. They tend to have low health, and if you do get them locked on, you basically have them in your grasp, and they're dead. So a lot of the times you'll see pulse lasers, you'll see hyper turrets, you'll see the short range autocannons, you'll see like the heavy assault missiles. Like these are all weapons that are used typically by a lot of the brawling ships, and sometimes they run in like a big ball. They have like a big ball of like Logian ships, and they just slowly start trying to grab some of the other people. And so there's definitely benefits and disadvantages to both of these styles of fleets. For the most part, brawling is, if you go in, you're pretty much committing to the brawl. There's not a lot of ways to disengage or catch people and things like that. But if you do get on top of a fleet, or if you do get to be able to get on top of important targets, they're pretty much dead immediately. All right, and this next one, I'm going to try and be quick. I've noticed I've been going like way too in depth with some of these things. This next one is something I've never heard before up until like, I kid you not, like 3 weeks ago, which is called Booshing. This is something that the T2 command destroyers can do. There's a certain modules that they put into their high slot, which allows them to essentially teleport themselves and 25 other objects. So it could be drones, it can be ships, anything like that, basically anything unanchored. I'm still not 100% certain on that kind of interaction, but you can basically teleport any of these ships and drones or whatever it is 100 kilometers away. So you can kind of think in your head, there's a lot of really interesting ways that you can utilize this. So you can teleport your fleet into another fleet and being able to engage really quickly from 100 kilometers away. You can boosh off half their fleet in one direction, so that way you can actually tackle half of a fleet at once, making it much, much easier for you to win that fight. You can boost their logi away. You can use it as a way to, there's another term called spearfishing, where you can actually have a group of anywhere between like 2 to 5 of these command destroyers, and you have them stagger their modules, so you're actually able to instantly teleport from 0 to 500 kilometers within 5 seconds and really surprise your enemy. There is some sort of counterplay, because it's a really, really cool mechanic. I've only seen it happen. I'm skilling into a command destroyer actually right now, and it's something I might make a video here on in the near future. But there's really only 2 ways to work around this. You either have to scram the command destroyer as it approaches. So as it's approaching, because its range is really short. It's only like 5,000 kilometers, I think, around it. So it actually has a really short range. So as it's approaching your ship, you can either scram the command destroyer and prevent it from booshing you, or if a ship is under the scram like condition, it's not going to get booshed away. So what you could actually have is some of your ships like scram each other, and that way they don't get booshed away if they're not able to reach the command destroyer itself like before it booshes them. So it's another kind of interesting mechanic about booshing. All right, now onto some more specific lessons that I've learned. And just to be clear, like this is me being a wormhole PvPer, so obviously your experiences might be very different if you're doing like low sec faction warfare versus null sec big fleet flights. So when I kind of give my example, it's typically reserved mostly for wormhole like warfare. So it's a bit different. So the first thing I've noticed is that trick ships in general are just like really, really strong. Like Kikimoras, Vedmax are really strong. Drekavacs are insane. Just the fact that all of these trick ships are able to basically spider tank each other, give each other cap. They tend to have a really good application. They're armor tank. They have great speed. Like these are ships that are very, very effective. And on average, they tend to run a little bit cheaper than some of like faction variants of some other empires as well. So in some ways, some of the versions are actually much, much cheaper and just as strong as some of the faction variants that the other empires have. So especially in wormhole content, I see Drekavacs all the freaking time. I don't see Vedmax too often, but Drekavacs is definitely a thing paired with some Guardians. That could be a very, very formidable fleet. And the next thing I want to talk about, and probably a lot of you solo PvPers know exactly what I'm talking about. The most, in my opinion, the most anti-fun ship in the game is the Hugin. This is a ship that gets a huge bonus to their web of fire range. And not only that, you also can't see them on D-scan. So a lot of you solar PvP pilots, if you're out in like nullsec and you know what I mean, you're always descanning, trying to figure out what ships are coming in to join the fight next. But with the Hugin, you have no idea they're showing up because they're actually immune to descan because they are part of that like scout fleet of ships. I'm trying to remember the exact name off the top of my head, but they're immune to descan. So not only do they get on grid and you can't see them come until they're actually on grid, and on top of that, some of the times if they're running faction webs and stuff like that, they could easily web you from 40, 50, 60, even 70 kilometers out, especially if they're heating some of their webs. And at that point, like Nano is useless. You're trying to outrun your ships. Now you're moving half or even like a quarter the speed, depending on how many webs they put on you. Now the ships are easily able to catch you. If you're brawling and you're trying to get on top of other ships or you're trying to escape, you're getting slowed by an insane amount. So the Hugin is, in my opinion, probably one of the most anti-fun ships in the game. It's probably a ton of fun to fly. That's another ship I do want to get into here in the near future. Because it does seem like a fun ship to fly, but it's definitely unfun for the people that you are targeting. All right, and the next one, and this is just kind of, some of these might just be like offhanded observations that I've made, especially when I've seen it happen a couple times in random engagements. And this one is like the Jackdaw has like ridiculous range. There was a time where I was flying either the Kirin or the Carries, I don't know, it was one of those like Ewar ships, and I was trying to lock onto this Jackdaw, and I was getting smacked from like 110 kilometers away. I was taking a ton of damage, and I was like, oh shoot, I need to warp off grid because I can't even lock this thing, yet he's still able to hit me extremely hard. So I've actually not skilled in any of the tactical destroyers 3, like the Tech 3 destroyers yet, but it seems like maybe the Jackdaw might be the first one I might skill into. Maybe the Hecate, it really depends, but both of those ships seem to be very good. But I might go with the Jackdaw just because it has absolutely absurd range. All right, and the next one is that the Minmatar boys, the Minmatar ships, go really fast, but they hate capacitor. So honestly, like before I joined Dark Venture, I had, I think, literally no levels into like even Minmatar like cruisers. Like everything was in Galente and Caldari and Amar and all that stuff. I was like, I don't really care for Minmatar, whatever, I don't care. But they tend to be the race to go with when it comes to PvP, just because the sheer speed, projectiles can do a decent amount of damage. And in this case, I've been practicing my PvP like kiting and solo fighting and all that stuff in a stabber mostly, which absolutely struggles with cap. And that seems to be the theme with most of the Minmatar ships is like, hey, we can go really quick, but we struggle on capacitors. So a lot of times you do have to be able to either have a cap booster or something along those lines, or really have to cycle your micro warp drive like on and off and be able to pulse it and really min-max your capacitor as much as possible. But so far, I've been using the Stabber, I've been using the Hurricane and the Hurricane Fleet issue. I've been having a lot of fun with those ships, but especially with the Stabber, it's just, from what I've been told from my corp mates, that it's notoriously known for having a terrible capacitor. So I think it's good to practice with a ship like that. That's quick, that's versatile, and can be fitted a million different ways. Maybe I'll even do a video of the ways I fit my Stabber if you guys are interested in that as well. But one thing I've learned is that it is horrible when it comes to capacitor. All right, and this next one I've actually hinted at a little bit earlier in the video, which is, from what I've seen, which is arguably one of the best, if not the best tackle ship in the game, which is the Ramjag. So the Jaguar is an assault damage frigate for the Minmatar fleet. And essentially they have very comparable speed because it's the Minmatar ship. It has very comparable speed to most interceptors in the game. And not only that, they can fit an assault damage control. So essentially the whole point is you get on grid, you just click approach to the ship that you want to target. You know, overheat your micro warp drive, whatever it is, and you just click approach and you basically just ram your ship into them. And the second you get locked, you turn on your assault to damage control, you take like 90% reduced damage, and you basically just ram your ship into theirs. You activate your scram module just to keep them there until help arrives. And that's pretty much it. So it's like, it's a much tankier version of some of the, basically an interceptor. You don't have to worry about trajectory and getting one shot and all that stuff, just because that assault damage control, your resistances get so high, you basically just ram your ship into theirs and put on a scram, and you just are able to lock them down until help arrives and blow them up. So of all the fleets I've been in within my own corp, or even when we do like a joint PvP fleet with like other corps, every single time someone said like, oh, I'm bringing a Ramjag, every time I've heard the FC say like, okay, that's great. I've actually never heard someone say, oh, don't bring any Ramjags, we don't need those. I've never heard that ever. All right, and this next one, I'm actually laughing because this is something I hear all the time, and I've seen like memes on it on YouTube and things like that, which is, hey, bubbles are very important to kill anything and pretty much anywhere, especially when it comes to wormholes and nullsec. And it seems pretty often that occasionally we try to kill something, but someone forgets to bring a bubbler, or the bubbler dies, and it's very hard to lock down certain ships without a bubble. So whether it's around a gate, around a wormhole, whatever it is, bubblers are very, very important to kill anything and anywhere. And so if there is a role you're trying to fill within your PvP fleet and you're not sure like what to bring or what to do, definitely like tackles, bubblers, boosters, those kind of things are very important, but definitely seems like bubblers for whatever reason do tend to get overlooked occasionally, unless you have that one or two guys in your corporation that are more than happy to like always bring a bubbler. And this next one is, I have a huge level of appreciation for a lot of the T1 and even faction ships in the game. For whatever reason, when I first started playing the game, I played with a friend who did nothing but do like level 4 missions, and he swore like Vindicators and Rattlesnakes were like the only way to do level 4 missions. So I thought that was the case, so I just completely skipped over like a lot of the T1 ships. I immediately got into a Gila, did like combat sites, level 4 missions, even did Abyss and stuff like that. So I pretty much did everything in like faction or T2 or pirate ships. But now that I'm trying to learn new roles, I'm trying to keep my lessons as cheap as possible. So when I'm trying a lot of my Ewar ships, I'm actually trying like the T1 frigate versions or the T1 cruiser versions before I graduate up to like the T2 versions, because those are very expensive. Those tend to get targeted infinitely more out in the battlefield. So if you guys are trying to learn a new role, a new weapon type, a new type of ship, whatever it is, try and start with like the T1 versions, because you will get blown up, you will die eventually, and multiple times over and over and over again. And I definitely want to learn these ships as the T1 versions because they're expendable, and that's kind of the whole point. You're just learning those lessons until you can get to the point where you're comfortable enough flying a bigger and better ship. All right, and speaking of a huge level of appreciation for T1 ships and faction like frigates and stuff like that, Ewar is extremely annoying, especially when you use it in the right scenarios. I actually did a forum post not too long ago asking people like, what's the most annoying form of Ewar you can think of, like outside of like webs and scrams and things like that. And overwhelmingly, a lot of people said newts and ECM, which are very effective, but so is things like sensor dampening. I remember flying around and I was trying to kill this. It was like 2 Nighthawks, a Carries, and a couple of Stabbers and a Saber. So like not a ton of ships, there was maybe 5 or 6, but they did such a good job of just keeping range, flying around us. I was trying to use a Hurricane at the time, I think, and I was just getting sensor damped by this Carries, and I could not lock anything beyond like 20 kilometers, which is definitely not what at least my Hurricane was designed for. So it was very annoying, and especially things like ECM drones, ECM boats, neuting boats. These things are very, very good. So it's not always just, push the most damage as possible. Ewar is essentially the equivalent of crowd control in any video game. So whether it's like a silence, a stun, a slow, whether you're like burning their mana, whatever you want to call it, that's essentially what Ewar is in EVE Online. And you guys know that in some of those games, those mechanics or forms of CC can be very overpowered. Same thing in EVE Online. So don't overlook Ewar. It's for some of the Ewar things, it's kind of hard to tell how effective they are, especially something like target painting and things like that. It's kind of hard to dictate like, oh, this is really effective. But I could just tell you right now, it's definitely effective, and you are making a huge impact when you are flying these type of ships. So again, I started with like the T1 frigates, and eventually I started playing around with the Carries, and I've been having a ton of fun with the Carries and sensor dampening all of those long range ships. It's been a ton of fun. All right, and this next one has definitely happened to me at least 3 or 4 times, and this is something I think even PvE players can understand, which is like medium and large newts are no joke. There's been a handful of times where I'm trying to tackle a Vedmak or a battleship or whatever it is, and they have like 1 or 2 medium or heavy newts. And typically in PvE, you kind of see it coming. There's a lot of little ships, they're neuting you, and then you're like, oh, I'm not paying attention, or I'm not killing them fast enough. I get neuted out slowly. And PvP, like they're designed to fit to instantly neut out things like frigates, destroyers, sometimes even cruisers instantly. So you have to be very careful when you're running into a ship that is running, especially large newts, that can instantly cap you out. Especially some of the best ships that are for neuting, at least right now, are like the Curse. They get huge bonuses to drain them out, as well as the Balgorn, or as we like to call it, the Bagelhorn, that he has huge neut bonuses. And even recently, I believe one of the Black Ops ships, I'm trying to remember the name of it off the top of my head, but that one of them actually recently got like a neuting bonus as well. If you guys remember that, put that down in the comments below as well. But yeah, large newts are absolutely no joke. All right, and to piggyback off of even that last one that I mentioned, which is the importance of cap boosters. I think I used cap boosters maybe 2 or 3 times ever before I started doing PvP, and I think I just like mistakenly put it on a ship when I was like running missions or something like that. I'm like, oh, I'll try this. Okay, it's actually not very effective. Never mind. But when it comes to PvP, it's very, very effective. Now, not every single ship needs one. Obviously, it depends on how many mid slots you have and all that stuff. So I do have a fit where I think I do run one on my Stabber, just because I was so tired of capping myself out after like less than 2 minutes. I was like, you know what, if I had a cap injector or a cap booster, I could just stay in the fight for as long as I had cap injectors, which is really, really nice. Or in that last instance that I mentioned, like being able to, if you get capped out as an interceptor and you're tackling a battleship, being able to inject some capacitor and have you be able to keep that lock on that battleship for 8 more seconds until help arrives is also a huge deal. So cap boosters, a whole nother level of appreciation. I always thought that was not necessarily a joke, but I never really understood how important they were until you're actually in the field and you're just sitting there floating in space, just slowly dying and no one's there to really help you. Definitely cap boosters are really, really important. All right, and last but certainly not least, this is a lesson I learned and eventually a lesson that every PvP player learns, which is it's very different than PvE, which is typically in PvE, you just throw more ISK at your ship to be able to upgrade it and do sites faster and do this and that. With PvP, it's very different. Unless you have all the skills and everything locked down, upgrading to blinging your ship and upgrading to pirate factions and all that stuff doesn't do much unless you actually have the skills. So, blinging out your ship, it doesn't make you a good pilot. It just makes great pilots into better ones. So if you just don't have the skills to be able to pilot certain ships or weapon types or whatever it is, upgrading your ship isn't going to do much for you. It's only going to increase that that margin of error. Maybe you'll survive for a few extra seconds. But if you just don't understand the ship and its capabilities and you have the skills like locked down, it's not going to do much for you. For example, I would love to be able to fly an Orthrus really, really well, get a bunch of kill marks, support my teammates, all that stuff. But I just personally don't feel like I'm confident enough to fly it effectively without whelping like 6 or 7 of them, like back to back to back to back. And it's also good for my wallet too. So I've been practicing with like the Caracol, the Osprey Navy issue, ships that fly similarly to the Orthrus until I can get to the point where I feel confident enough to fly the Orthrus on a consistent basis. I'm just starting off with some of the cheaper variants and versions first. So obviously that's my bit of advice. If you guys are trying to learn anything new, like I mentioned 2 or 3 times earlier in the video, stick with the T1, maybe some of the faction variants, get those things locked down before you start graduating up to like the T2 or like the pirate variants as well. So all right, and that's pretty much it, guys. Down in the comments below, I'd love to hear, do you guys agree with some of the things that I mentioned? Maybe disagree, maybe a cool story about a PvP encounter that you had when it comes to tackling, Ewar, nuding, like whatever it is. I'd love to hear your guys' stories down in the comments below. And don't forget to put in your in-game name so that way you guys qualify for the Scope Syndicate Megathron ship giveaway. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope you guys take care and you fly safe.